As a consultant, I used to work closely with clients, including Bosch, Bombardier, Lanxess, Liberty Global, Mahle, and Osram. I'm also a lecturer at Esslingen University, especially for innovation management related topics. And my background is the innovation management. All right, so let's get down to business. First of all, this is the topics for today. Starting off with an evaluation, general overview. I want to show you why evaluation is important and why we do that, and in what context this has to be seen. It will be followed up by an example from the real world, just a short one. And the core part of the webinar is the third part. And there we will have a look at the key challenges you face and the approaches there are to see what you can do about the challenges. And we will end with 3 different examples or scenarios with some recommendations for you and a little summary. All right, what we see is a picture here, because when we're talking about organizational innovation and evaluation, which is a part of organizational innovation, it's in a lot of ways pretty similar to talking about a horse race. And a horse today plays the role of an idea. So if the race is on, or even before that, like in organizational innovation, it attracts people. There's excitement, there's money involved, there's competition going on, there's decisions to take. Think about people that place their bets. They need to, or they want to make money out of it. And so there's decisions to take. And there's for sure a lot of discipline and training. And like in organizational innovation, it's fun and quite serious at the same time. And the list goes on. So we have the picture of a horse race today, but I changed it a little. Some minor changes compared to a usual horse race is done here, because our horse race also has obstacles, and I will get back to that point. So the only thing I want to say right now to this slide is organizational innovation is not just about generating creative business ideas, but it's also about reviewing ideas. Because we want to get them, or identify the potentially successful innovations. Speaking of evaluation, it's just a tiny part of the whole innovation process. So when we take a look at today, take a look at only the evaluation part, we're seeing that only a tiny part of the whole process. And when we're talking of that, we all know that the innovation process is quite an interdependent thing. There's high levels of interdependencies. Anyhow, we try to focus on the evaluation part and only sometimes get to see those interdependencies, because this is for the reason we have limited time today. And I will try to walk you through as quick as possible. So most companies have a defined innovation process in place. This is just an example, very abstract example. And it's almost always some form of stage gate process. And at every gate, because there's phases and gates, at every gate there's at least one evaluation. And this is what we're talking about today. So we get to the point of why is evaluation important? Why do we do that? Why do we need to do that? And it's pretty simple. If you go to a horse race, you see a lot of horses. And if I said, well, the horses can be seen like ideas, it's a lot of ideas that you face. And on the other hand, you have limited resources. So you really need to do a selection here, because you can't bet on every horse. It just doesn't make sense. So usually you can't use every idea that comes in. And on the other hand, you wouldn't want to use every idea. So you can see that like ideas compete for available resources. And of course, because of that, the needs for strong mechanisms, or the need is very strong for mechanisms to identify the best ideas in an effective and efficient way, because you don't want to spend time or too much time and resources on selecting these ideas. A nice side effect, by the way, is that you give the crowd directions with your selections, which ideas to reject and which ideas pass. You give directions about which ideas are welcome. All right, then what you do is, the other day, to find out which horse will be a winner and which not, you do an assessment. So imagine that you walk into the horse stables, for example, for half an hour to take a look at the participating horses. And because you want to find out which of them could be a likely winner and which not, you are doing an assessment somehow. And especially the initial assessment of ideas, the first gate, is very crucial, because ideas that are rejected at this first gate, the likelihood is very high that you will never look at them again. So selecting the best ideas for further consideration is absolutely crucial. So what's the problem with ideas or horses? The problem is that most companies have a very structured way of how to generate ideas and these kind of things. But really what we discovered in the last time is they don't have a structured review process, and that's a very important part, as we just saw, of the whole process, and that's often overlooked. So, but on the other hand, ideas are often hard to compare. Speaking of, well, they have different grades of maturity. They might be different in grades of novelty or complexity. Sometimes you see an idea that doesn't fit the normal view as an outlier, for example. And of course, you have different grades of information to each and every idea. So you usually, plus you usually deal with the time pressure. And in the end, all these different ideas, very different ideas, they need to be processed effectively. And because of that, you really need a structure. When you don't have it, it threatens your effectiveness, the engagement of participants for sure, and the whole sustainability of the program. And as you can see from that, it leads to good ideas being overlooked. Okay, some wise people did a lot of thinking on evaluation methods. And these methods, these methods are developed by, I don't know, a lot of scientific people, or scientific people, let's call them that. And we have just a tiny part of these methods or techniques for the idea evaluation right here. And not at all simple and effective at the same time. And like I said, it's just a small extract. We will not look into a lot of these techniques and compare them, but we will, pick out some of them and then move on. But people made themselves, or people thought about things, and there's a lot of things to discover there. Okay, now we're coming to the example from the real world. Companies, especially in the beginning, in the early stages, when it comes to the first gate or gates, they like scoring models. What is a scoring model? Scoring model always includes a number of evaluators, one or more criteria, sometimes weighted, to get higher accuracy, but it's pretty simple. Like, the advantages can be seen clearly. It's a simple setup. It's a minimum amount of time for review. You enable, the scoring models enable you to compare your reviews, and it makes it easy just to identify the most promising ideas. So in this real-world example, it's a first assessment, and 10 evaluators are taking part, and it's just one criteria. And the score range is 1 to 6, similar to the German school grade model, and where 1 would be the best and 6 is the worst. And an idea is passing this gate when it makes an average of 2.0, and it's failing if it's above that. So here's the scorecard. And what we see here is, well, the average is not met. And because of that, the idea is rejected. It just doesn't work. And when we take a closer look on the scorecard, what we can see here is, although 3 evaluators gave the highest possible rating, the idea is rejected just because of its average score. And this is the real world. And what I want to show you by that is, well, no matter what method you make use of, it will always affect your outcome. And this sounds pretty simple, but when you look at this, and you may ask yourself, or I got the feeling that this might be a little unfair, but we come back to that later. All right, now we come to the core part of this webinar. And I present you the challenges you face. So there's 3 major challenges you face when you're doing evaluation. And the first one might be the worst one. It's the context in which evaluations are taking place. Just be aware of it that there is a context whenever you want to evaluate. And what do I mean by context, which is a major issue? Just let me pick 2 examples here. There's the question, for example. And I'm sure you might have heard of that, but it's extremely important to ask a good question. Now, what is a good question? That's something different, but let's just say to ask the right question. Because it just affects the number and the quality of ideas you will have to evaluate. And it just, has an impact on your evaluation. But there's other context things. Maybe taking out the competing interests. Imagine you have an engineer on your evaluation team, and he's a very good engineer, and he's especially trained in an older technology that you use, and he might just give a low evaluation score to an idea that uses a new technology. And why is that? Well, he feels that the success of the new idea with the new technology it might threaten his job, so he gives a low score. Or you can take it the other way around. There might be a jealous manager, and he doesn't like the fact that his colleagues are more creative than him, and he might give a poor evaluation just because of that, just because especially to creative ideas, because he's jealous of that. So there's a lot of things you want to get rid of. These context things you want to get rid of to get to a more true result. You want to get rid of these context influences. As always, when something new comes up, it threatens the status quo. So people tend to be very conservative, and they think they need to stick to the old things. You might have seen that with yourselves, but we're all in the innovation area, so we're acting differently. We all think that, but we're not doing that. So especially with bigger companies, they have the problem that it gets harder and harder with these context issues, that they kick in and they more and more stick to the conservative way, which is on the other end than the innovative way. And it comes to that the market becomes more innovative than the company. So this is a huge threat for your innovative activities. It's so bad with the context influences that at Siemens they thought of, yeah, how can we deal with it? And they were trying out the innovation roulette when it comes to selecting ideas, when it comes to evaluation. So why that? They had some key thoughts why they should do that. And they just thought, well, chance is cruel. It doesn't know a strategy, doesn't know friends or enemies. And chance, of course, doesn't know about traditions or competencies. So what are the benefits of putting a kind of evolutionary approach to selecting ideas? Well, the benefits are that you exclude most of the context areas or influences. And you really get rid of tunnel vision because chance just doesn't care. And even more, you might learn to build new competencies. But we're not using the roulettes. This is just to show you how bad these context influences are. So what's the approach here? The approach here is that we are picking, or we want to pick, the right evaluators. What is a sponsor? If you're not familiar with that, the sponsor is the owner of a problem and he has the money to implement ideas. And of course, the sponsor needs to nominate suitable evaluators. It's a matter of trust. Understanding, they need, or the sponsor needs to put people in place that understand the scope of a campaign or of his campaign. And what's really crucial is that you have a diverse team with relevant expertise. Let me give you an example for that. Maybe think of an electronic gadget idea. What would be suitable evaluators? Well, for an electronic gadget, you might want to have engineers on your team, maybe some marketing people, also maybe retailers that sell the product, or consumers that are expected to buy the product. And why a diverse team? Why is it that crucial to have a diverse team? Well, when you have a diverse team in place, it's likely that they cancel out prejudices. So when it threatens their job, it's just one of them. Or yeah, what you do is you cancel out the context or some of these context issues. What is really not necessary is that you have creatives in evaluation. Don't do that. Their work is done at some other phases, but you clearly don't want to have them in the evaluation. Really check on the availability in advance of your of the campaign of your evaluators, because yeah, vacation times or I don't know, project work, if an evaluator you selected is not available but is forced to evaluate, it can slow down the process. And so just avoid that and block time in evaluator schedules. And sometimes I get asked, involving a community, yes or no, as evaluators? Well, it depends. It depends mostly upon the topic and the scope of the campaign. Let's say you have a rocket science campaign running. It doesn't make sense to let the community evaluate something. They just wouldn't understand. And with very small campaigns where you don't expect a lot of ideas going back to you, it just doesn't make sense either, because you can look with the evaluation team or for yourself into these ideas. I want to give you now a little excursion and a little thought on picking the right evaluators. Maybe you have seen this before. What we see here? It's a diffusion curve, and it's a model. It's a theory that seeks to explain how and why and at what rate new ideas and technologies spread. Well, it says individuals do not adopt at the same time. It's like the innovators adopt at first, and they infect the early adopters, and they infect the early majority, and so on. So most of the evaluation methods, without even thinking about it, just implicitly, they assume that the idea should suit as many as possible. And if we're talking about that, we're talking about these people here. But that's not the case. We shouldn't look at them when it's really about innovative ideas. We should look more to the front here, because these are the gatekeepers. And so why not involve lead users to the evaluation team? They usually, the lead users or the innovators, they face the marketplace months or years before the bulk of the marketplace encounters them. So when it's really about innovative ideas, maybe it's worth a thought that you include some lead users here. All right. And there's a second answer to canceling out the context issue. It's the wildcards. And the wildcards are a nice thing to do. Coming back to the example from the real world in the beginning with the scorecard, and the idea didn't pass because it didn't make the average, wildcards could have solved that problem. They're kind of replacing a variance analysis. So if 3 evaluators gave the highest possible rate in that scoreboard, one of them, at least one of them, would play a wild card and say, well, I'm taking this idea because I really have the feeling it works, and the idea is not rejected. So wild cards are a strong instrument for canceling out the context issues. And especially what we saw from the example in the real world, especially because extremes and extreme ratings are an indicator for really innovative ideas. And this is because the potential is not seen by all evaluators, or the idea is not understood because it's not mature enough, and the list goes on. So wildcards allow you to include all these crazy ideas at the end of the bar. And maybe there's ideas that do not well in an assessment, but some evaluator feels, well, it's worth it. I play a wild card. So wildcards mitigate most of the context issues. And you can also say, well, wildcards are there to spot the diamonds in the rough. And like in the real world, the majority of people can't see the diamonds in the rough. So also think about that the least popular ideas are sometimes the breakthrough ideas. So this is a very powerful tool at your hand to cancel out the context issues. What you do is you just allow each evaluator a number of wildcards, small number of wildcards, and they can make ideas pass a gate, which otherwise wouldn't have been possible. Okay, and then there's another major challenge. But the slide wouldn't. Now here it is. There's another major challenge you face when you're talking about evaluation. And this is ideas are really different. Ideas are really different, and this is a huge problem. Even when ideas answer to all the same problem, they have a different grade of maturity, novelty, complexity, and so on. I was telling you about that in the beginning. So what can you do against this? You need to have a process at hand that takes care of these things. So why not evaluate ideas in different ways at different stages of development? And the first thing you really have to think about is getting the right balance between gut instinct when you're evaluating or metrics and metrics. And to find this balance is not that easy, because some of the ideas, some of the best ideas, are generated from a little more than a gut feeling, but a go-ahead from your organization would possibly only be doable if a basis of such an, or let's put it another way, the basis of such an instinct alone can be difficult, and organizations just require at a certain point of time ideas or concepts to test well before advancing further with them. So unfortunately, metrics can allow that some truly great ideas fall through the cracks. So you need to balance that, and what happens is, usually when doing or when being in the first development phase of an idea, it's gut feelings, because, well, you don't have all the information. You think that, yeah, using metrics, it just doesn't make sense. In earlier phases, you have a broad judgment, plays a role, and later on, numbers kick in. So when you're at this later point and numbers kick in, really make sure that you have the knowledge on board that lets you be precise on your analysis. Because otherwise, it would be like people spend days discussing Excel spreadsheets and that are nothing more than relationships between made-up numbers. It just doesn't make sense. And what do you do if you have an idea or a number of ideas that score very high on the gut feeling method, but very low on the metrics? Well, what you can do is to close these gaps, you can run a campaign on these things with high ratings on the gut feel metrics, but low on the score models. And just some minor adjustments to these ideas can close these gaps. This is a very powerful and overlooked tool here. All right. Then what we face is a third challenge, which is kind of related to challenge number 2. And this is about, well, yeah, you have a tool, and you maybe know that from yourself. You have some limited tools, and you try to do everything with it. Well, but there's a tool for everything. So what I want to say is not every evaluation tool at your disposal is appropriate for any type for idea. Let me give you an example here. So when you use different evaluation techniques, or you use different evaluation techniques for limited scope programs you run, or on the other hand, let's say you need a different tool when it's about organization-wide initiatives. And what I did here is just some examples for different types of ideas. So there's very maybe disruptive ideas as the strawberry, and on the other hand, it might be just a minor change somewhere. And all of these things, I think it's obvious, need to be evaluated differently. So how can we approach this? Well, of course, first of all, you have to look for the right evaluation tool that's at your disposal, which is the most appropriate one. And then another thing, very crucial thing, is that you have to group these ideas. And when that's, well, grouping ideas is talking about campaigns. It's about a certain topic. And this leads to that I'd say that different campaigns will require different types of evaluation. And you really, really have to be familiar with the tools for evaluation that you use because yeah, everybody taking part in this process might need to be trained. When talking about evaluation methods or tools, well, you pretty soon come to criteria as well. And similar to the who's or picking the right evaluators, it's again the sponsor who tells you, well, or should be asked, let's put it the other way around, should be asked, what are the criteria? Because, well, yeah, the criteria, the sponsor tells you the criteria as he has the money and takes the final decision. So be reasonably broad but not too vague with your criteria. Maybe to give you another example here, let's say you have the criteria, is it a good idea, yes or no? You will get all sorts of things that get through. On the other end of the bar would be, can we implement immediately with no extra resource? Well, this would lead to a rejection of all the good ideas. So what is a good trade-off here? We made the experience that a 5.5 matrix seems to be a good trade-off. That means you're having 5 criteria with the score range from 1 to 5. And you don't want to use too many criteria, as you, well, that's just because you don't want to bog evaluators in unnecessary detail here. And why not consider novelty as one criteria? This is often overlooked too, because when we're talking about innovation, well, we know that innovation doesn't come from the same old, so why don't we consider novelty here? Another part of this approach is, well, ask for comments. Sounds very simple. And the second part of this ask for comments is review these comments too. And because they might be far more important than scores. And in comments, the evaluators can elaborate on their ratings. And even more, they could, why do you not ask for how can we overcome weaknesses? How can we overcome threats? And this is pretty powerful because an idea could be very poor in the beginning because just because it's too well, it's too weak in some parts. But if you ask the people right away how to overcome them and let them suggest countermeasures, this could be a huge success, or the idea can turn into a huge success. So ask them especially for weaknesses and threats, and their possible solution. And a third thing you might want to consider with this approach is communicate the selection process and criteria to submitters. On the one hand, you show them what you really want and against what they're being measured. And on the other hand, you're staying transparent. You just if you don't use an idea, tell them why this time not. And what really helps there is to have some predefined standard responses. Yeah, this is just to ensure your submitters that they aren't disillusioned with your process. All right, I have a look at the time. Well, what I did here is there's a lot of things or suggestions that don't fit or don't really fit to the 3 challenges we just looked at. So in terms of time, I just and you get the slides. In terms of time, I really might want to skip these. And just you can take a look at a later time, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask me at a later point of time. So I try to highlight the relevant stuff. All right, maybe one thing, to go to one thing. If you probably have an idea bank. This means every idea rejected at a certain point of time in a gate, it goes to the idea bank. And when you're talking about evaluation, then if you put it in if you put more context to it, why not periodically go through that content you have in the idea bank? So something's good. Maybe the idea wasn't mature enough, and it pops back in your process. But well, all right. There's three scenarios I prepared here, and to be honest, they are real. So we deal. Speaking of the outcome, we deal with different things here. So let's take a look at scenario number one. It should give you a little guidance and at the same time see how our customers dealt with certain problems. So let's say you have 20 high-quality ideas you need to select, and you need to select which ideas you want to implement. Do you want community graduation in there? No, guess not. This is just because you can. It's not a high number of ideas, and it's high-quality ideas. You don't need the community to graduate anything. You can do that by yourself or with a team. And what other reviews are in place there? Well, the evaluation metrics, very powerful tool if you use it the right way. And who's doing that? Subject matter experts. And in a second phase, these ideas that made the evaluation metrics, they're presented in a workshop. So we have 1 to 2 evaluation rounds. And of course, as I want to stress another time, you want to have the wildcards, as it's a very powerful thing. And there's a main task you will face when we're in that scenario. So selecting the most promising ideas and considering everything, because you have the time for it. It's not too much stuff. And the success factor when you have that is really to go back on a periodical basis, to go back to the submitters and the people that commented on these ideas, to go back to them and ask them for refinements. And do that every, let's say, you just come back to them, let's say, every 2 or 3 weeks and ask them for refinements. The implementation rate is quite high because it's already quite high-quality ideas. So it's a different thing when we're talking about a different scenario. And the second scenario would be you have 100 ideas. And 20 of these 100 ideas had useful comments. Do we want community graduation? Maybe. Depends. Depends on the topic. Depends on the audience. In this case, no community graduation was taking place because the team could make it, had enough resources, and on the other hand, the topic did say, or the topic was that specific that the community wouldn't be a good thing to evaluate these ideas. So how did they do it? They did it in evaluation metrics as well, but with a mix of people, the diverse evaluators, and they did an ABC analysis to get a more rounded picture of these ideas. So a round more, or maybe let's say half a round more in evaluations, and of course wildcards were used. And the main task is a little different to the first scenario, because now the main task was more finding the best content from the ideas, and especially the comments, and then after that creating the shortlist. And well, the feedback was that receiving more valuable comments is much more useful than having more ideas. because yeah, the comments just build on these ideas and make them much more powerful. And be aware that if you have a lot of interaction within a campaign, a lot of collaboration is going on, this of course requires more time for evaluation because you have to read through all the comments and review them too. And then the third scenario would be you're just being overrun. It's 1,000 ideas of variable quality, and this is where communication kicks in, because otherwise you just couldn't handle it. And well, the reviews are a little bit different here, or were done a little bit different, because it was a multinational campaign. People in different languages. People were, before looking at all the ideas and doing the first triage, they were looking at it country-wise, language-wise. And after that, they had an enrichment phase, which is, well, not a review tool, but it really made sense to put some more content to the ideas, to build on ideas. And after that, they had a SWOT analysis running over that. What you can see from that is the more ideas you have to handle, the more likely it is that you have a higher number of evaluation rounds. The wild cards always kick in because, yeah, it's the diamonds in the rough, and you don't want to miss. And then the main task is really focusing on a different thing here. It's more organizing stuff. It's handling duplicates. It's combining the know-how of information, and it's a total different view that you have to take if you, yeah, running a campaign which leads to a lot of ideas. And the success factors are definitely, or were definitely, having good organizing skills. Remember to block the evaluators in time. And what do you do with out-of-scope ideas? Be ready to have answers to people that handed in ideas which are just out of scope. And what do you do with them? You put them in an idea bank, or maybe can group them and run a new campaign. And of course, what we also see is the more ideas we get, it doesn't mean that we have a higher success rate or anything. It's just our implementation rate goes down because it's just diverse content. And well, this is just, yeah, that you see that more ideas are not the same as, yeah, getting successful with it. All right, short summary, because I want, if you didn't listen or anything, I want you to take some things home, which are the, yeah, the most important takeaways I want you to remember. Well, these are the 3 points here. The best way to ensure your evaluation process is think of it in advance and really write a good question and make a good selection of your evaluation team members and allocate time. Do not forget that. The next thing would be use pre-selection filter, because you really want to get rid of a lot of ideas as soon as possible if you're facing a lot of ideas. And this will help. This will just help to your team to spend more time on the best content. Don't be too quick though in first triage, because if you overlook the things, so this is a speed matter. And finally, review all the comments if possible, and after that make a quality-based assessment and allow your team members to promote a small number of ideas. This is the wild cards, which lack wider support to minimize context issues and allow more radical content to filter through. So I hope that helped. I'm happy to answer your questions. If questions arise at a later point of time, feel free to contact me anytime via mail, and I'm happy to discuss these things with you. And yeah, let's see what questions arose here. All right, I have a question here. What are the weaknesses of community graduation? Well, the weakness, or yeah, the main weakness I see in community graduation is you're overlooking good. You might be over, or the chances high that you overlook good ideas. This might be because the really good ideas are not understood, or political influence kicks in. That means people just comment or vote for ideas to make themselves visible to their boss if the idea comes from their boss. And of course, there's always weaknesses and strengths with every evaluation tool, but I think when it comes to a lot of ideas and your team just can't handle a lot of ideas, then it's the best choice available when facing this scenario. Okay, let me read through the next questions. So here's a question. Evaluators are sometimes considering the task as additional responsibility. How do you motivate evaluators to ensure they are efficient in their task? Well, sometimes evaluators are, it's their main work, and people say, yeah, well, you don't have to motivate them. It's their duty to do that. But speaking of motivation for evaluators, it's surely a hard thing to do, and especially when evaluators have a lot of other stuff to do. But you can think of motivating evaluators when or by maybe telling what the benefits or what benefits they could take with them. Well, on the one hand, it's survival of the own company and of their job. And on the other hand, it can be very, very nice for them to get to talk to other evaluators about these things, or if they're just subject matter experts, to get in touch with other evaluators they didn't meet before. So, but maybe I can think of more things to motivate evaluators when having more time with that. So I will get back to that and answer these questions a little bit more precise and take a little time for that. So what else is there? What do you think is a good amount of evaluators in one team? Well, I'd say it depends what you do. Let's say you're doing a workshop and it's a show of hands, then you can include maybe between 5 or 10 people. But if you say, well, I want subject matter experts and no one should see the other yeah, so that there's no cascade effects or anything, you can just invite as many as you want. So there is not a good amount of evaluators for a team for every method you're using. But let's say if you're facing, or if you're doing this workshop thing, for example, yeah, let's say 5 to 10 should do it. And or what is more important is to have a diverse team of evaluators. Okay, what else do I have here? What's a right setup for community graduation? Oh, that's a tough one. Well, if you start for the first time with community graduation, you don't have any experience with that. What do? Well, you start out with usually low thresholds, and you can change the rules after you see what's going to happen. So if too many ideas come through, you just raise the bar and tell the audience what you did, and the other way around. So it's a lot about gaining experience with it. And on the other hand, it is about, well, depends what you want. If you really want that people collaborate a lot and comment a lot, you should seek, or you should ask the invitees to seek a number of comments that build and improve on the idea before it will be evaluated. So this does not only improve engagement and idea quality, but it also helps to ensure the evaluation team members spread their time on the most engaging ideas. Let's see what we can do. Another question. How many criteria of evaluation are good to use per idea? Yeah, like I said, it depends on the method, but let's say you're having a scoring model. We made the experience that a 5.5 makes sense. That means you're having 5 criteria, and that you do not bog your evaluators with too much detail. And of course, it depends on where you are with your ideas. Can they do this? Can they really answer the criteria, or is it just doesn't it make sense because the idea is not mature enough? But yeah, we make very good experiences with 5 criteria and a score range from 1 to 5. What else is there? So there's a couple more of questions here, and some are a little bit off topic. I will respond to them that they are a little bit off topic, and just have to leave them out. But some are really interesting stuff here, and yeah, as time runs away, I'd be happy to answer your questions to you after our webinar.
So thank you everybody for being with us today, and as Mark just said, we'll come back to you with a follow-up email containing the slides and additional information, all your questions answered. And I hope to be able to welcome you soon again. Bye-bye, and thanks for your time.